those of you who don't know me, my name's Andy Brogan. I'm the Director of Nursing for the Trust. I've got lots of titles, but I'm the Director of Nursing for the Trust. Some warnings before I start, really. When I'm excited, or when I'm nervous, and when I'm happy, and I'm all three things at the present moment, I can break into some colloquial Scottish language. Some people call that swearing, so I'll try not to do that, and I certainly apologise if that happens any time during the day. Now, I've dropped my glasses, haven't I? I've dropped my glasses. Seriously, I've dropped my glasses. I found them. Right. We've been planning this for 9 months, and I lose my glasses. So, can I welcome everybody to, this is the first nurse conference we've had for several years, and certainly the first one that's been hosted by me. And there's loads of you here, isn't there? There's loads of you in this room, and with more to come. So I don't know where we're going to put you. We have, I think, over 150 people here today. We turn many, many people away, so I'm really delighted so many people have taken the time to come. And I'm absolutely delighted to see so many of nursing colleagues here. Now, apparently, although I admire all your dedication to duty, there's somebody I have to pick out in particular. I'm going to pick out a few people today in particular, but one person is here, and her name is Maggie Davies, and it's her birthday today. So I don't know where she is, but I'm not going to make you sing. I'm not going to make you sing "Happy Birthday." Don't worry. But you've got to stand up, and we're going to applaud you for your birthday, Maggie. She's up the back. Don't feel you'll get away with it, because there's going to be more of this as the day goes on. This is a celebration, really, and I'm going to talk a bit about what we are hoping to achieve today. But I have to tell you about fire drills and toilets, etc., etc. We're told that there's not going to be any fire drills today, so if the fire alarm goes off, it's a real fire. Fire exit there, up the back, and I think you can go out there, depending where the fire is, isn't it? And we assemble at the back of the car park there, I think. So, toilets, most of you have found them. I don't need to tell you where the toilets are. You've been to hotels before, you know how to get to the toilet. So that's that bit over. We're also tweeting today. For those of you who like tweeting, we'd encourage you to do it. We've got, where's Amanda? We've got a hashtag that's #SEPT. Am I right in that? Yep. I've used that a few times today. Most of my tweets aren't inspiring, I've got to say. You know, there's some people that are fantastic at it, but we would encourage you to do it, to comment on what's been happening, any opinions you have. You know, we don't want you to say, didn't think much of the chief executive of the RCN. I don't want you to tweet that, because she's sitting in front of me, and I'm sure you won't anyway. But certainly we'd like you to comment on how you feel the day's gone. Something else important for us, that we've not spent any money of the Trust's operational budgets on this conference, and I think that's very important to me, but I know it will be very important to you. A big proportion, and the bulk of the funding, has come from our sponsor, Fortress, he's over there, who've been very, very generous to us in their sponsorship of this. So over half the funding for the conference has come from there. If you don't know what Fortress is, they do Mobius. I don't want you to boo that, so don't do that. But we are very, very grateful, so thank you very much for that. And the remainder has come from our training budget, and all of this contributes to the registrants in here for your revalidation. So who's revalidated? Is anybody in the room who's actually revalidated yet? See, there's loads of you. It's dead easy, wasn't it? Yeah. There you are. So those of you who haven't done it, it's dead easy. The main reason we're having this conference is that about a week before Nurses Day, somebody would say to me, "What are you doing for Nurses Day?" And we say, "Oh, I don't know." And so we'd take cakes round. Those of you can remember, we used to bring cakes round and Now, it was quite nice and that, but we didn't think we were really doing enough to celebrate what we do as nurses and the fantastic work we do, and we decided to have this conference. Now apparently, I eat too much cake as it is. I don't know who wrote that in my script here, but I'm very, very proud of being a nurse. I've been a nurse for over 40 years, and I know and I hope everybody in the room is too. And there's so much to celebrate about what we do, and I hope today you'll pick up about all the things you're doing, we're doing, and the Trust is doing for nursing. And I just wanted for as many of us as possible to get together this year to do that. Now, I couldn't take all the nurses into a room. We couldn't get a venue big enough, but we've arranged, and you'll see we're filming the conference. You're all being filmed today. And we've arranged for the conference, and I think all the master classes, or the majority of the master classes, to be filmed. And we're going to upload the film with careful editing, of course. We'll be very careful to make sure I look my best. Who wrote that for me? That's very true. But we'll carefully edit it, and we'll share the learning with the whole nursing and nursing support workforce, and again contributes to our CPD. Now, I'm not going to speak for long, and for those of you who know me will be relieved at that, but what I want to do is just have a brief look at how nursing has changed down the years. So I'm going to start with a picture, I think. So, for those of you who know your nursing history, there's two famous nurses there, Florence Nightingale and Mary Seacole. There is somebody who shaped the face of nursing, the bottom picture there, and how many people believe what the nursing profession is. For the more mature here, that is Hattie Jakes, who was the archetypal matron. There'll be people in here who don't know who that is, which is really a worry for me. Don't tell me, but there will be. Now, there's probably a lot of people who don't know who that is, isn't there? For those of you who do know Hattie Jakes, she's not a real nurse. She's an actress. But she did define a lot about what the stereotype of nurses were about. You'll see, we know that the word nurse can be traced back to a Latin word for nutritious, that means nourishing or feeding, until really the late 1800s. It was generally a role undertaken by poor females. Janet might say, what's changed now on our pay, and often considered to be inept. And it was mostly about hygiene and comfort needs. And most of you know the history of Florence Nightingale, where in the Crimean War, more soldiers were dying from disease than from their wounds. And she worked towards improvement in sanitation, nutrition, and activity for patients, and gaining recognition for the role of the nurse in 1860. What's often forgotten, I think, and I think it's been recognised a lot more now, is the role that Mary Seacole played in the history and development of nursing. She was actually turned down by the War Office to go to the Crimea, but despite that, she funded herself to accompany Florence Nightingale, and she actually opened what was called the British Hotel, 2 miles from the conflict, to house and nurse injured soldiers. And it really is a bit of a travesty that she hasn't got the credit she's deserved, and that's probably a lot to do with her race at that time. But I think she's getting the recognition. So there were two key figures in the development of her profession. And certainly over the next 30 years or so, there was a number of campaigns to regulate nurses, and it was really the result of the nursing workforce and their efforts during the First World War that saw the passing of the Nursing Act in 1919, and Ethel Gordon Fenwick was the first registered nurse in 1923. I don't have a picture of her, unfortunately. Of course, I do have a picture of Sarah Brown. If you're wondering who that nurse is there, who's our Deputy Director of Nursing. She hasn't changed very much, as you can tell. She didn't want to have her picture in here, but we thought we'd put it in. Now, when we talk about history, I think, and we'll recognise throughout the day, lots have changed, but lots of things haven't changed in terms of our struggle for recognition as a profession, how we want to move forward, how we want to change roles, how we want to develop, who's going to be registered, who's not going to be registered. So when I qualified, I think it was the General Nursing Council that had been around for years, and then there was an organisation, I'm feeling old now, the UKCC. Some of you can remember that. Some of you can remember that, can you? Yeah. Then we had the Nursing Midwifery Council in 2002. It wasn't until the year 2013 that degree level nurses were properly recognised. Again, you've got to think about why is that in this day and age where it took so long for all these professions to be recognised. And we've recently had revalidation, as you all know, which I actually think is an incredibly positive thing for nursing. And it has been really good, certainly working our way through it and understanding what we are required to do in our role. And we've had a revised course of practice, which I've just had occasion, I think, to write to most registrants in the Trust about the code of practice and the use of social media, hence the warning about tweeting and being very careful. People look and really want to find out what nurses are doing, and they will not hesitate to report you to the NMC if they find anything untoward. It's a minefield. I wouldn't discourage people from using social media, but we've recently had occasion where staff have been caught out by it, by doing things that are probably innocent, but people interpret them differently. And we've now got a whole diversity in roles, specialities and settings. So we've come a very, very long way. This is just a slide in terms of number of nurses in England directly employed. We've gone up in the last couple of years, but I know it doesn't feel like that to me, and it certainly doesn't feel like that to you. We've got all these restrictions on us now in terms of agency and bank. None of these things we would argue about, but it's putting enormous pressure on us as a profession. You'll see these are just two pie charts, just demonstrating in terms of what the nursing workforce proportion makes up of healthcare on your left, and on my right it's how it is in SEPT. And you'll see that I think it's about 60% of our workforce is nurses in our trust. I always say to my colleagues on the board that we are the profession that are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and we're the only profession that really does that. And often when I've visited services, particularly around Easter, there's an absence of any other profession apart from nurses actually there delivering care to patients. So we play a very key role in contributing to our patients' care. But we have many challenges, I think. We've certainly got a real skill and labour shortage at the present moment. We're actually doing very well. Again, it might not feel that to you. I think our vacancy rate is about 13% for nurses overall. In some areas it's much higher, in our wards it's much higher. But we know trusts locally have 55% vacancy rates in some of their clinical areas. We've got to do better, but there isn't a supply of nurses out there. Big challenge for us. Loads of technological advances that we have to adapt to and change. And it's a changing face of what our patients, our carers expect from us. When I first became a nursing officer in Wales in the 1980s, somebody complained to what was called the physician superintendent, who was in charge of the hospital at that time. And his response was, well, tell the mother to take her son home. And that was the response. If you complained, you're getting a good service. Not only are you getting a good service, it's free, isn't it? So take your son home. Big change nowadays, for the better. I'm not suggesting that was a positive approach. But I think the demands are very much different. We know there's a lot of very different lifestyle choices people now make. The younger generation, whichever generation you call X, Y or Z, have very, very different expectations of healthcare. One of the things that quite surprised me when we did some work to look at the pattern of admissions to A&E that was causing real pressures over the winter. And the biggest increase wasn't elderly, the biggest increase was people 18 to 30. And we think that, and that surprised us, but when you think about it, this is a generation who don't want to wait, they just want things now, they don't want to go to, they've not got the history of going to their GP, they just go to A&E and they want something sorted now. Talked a bit about media. Google's a wonderful resource, but it's also a terrible resource. It depends which site you actually click on that tells you about your illness or your disease. So it can be used well and it can be misused, but again, that can be a challenge for us. We put revalidation down as a challenge, and I think when we first started talking about it, we thought it might be, but it has gone extremely well, and nurses have embraced it. And one of the things is when we try and have training and learning events, it's quite hard to get release and get people there. When we talk about revalidation, it's always full. And I think people have really embraced this and accepted it. We have a very difficult economic environment, as people know, lots of long-term conditions. The supply I've talked about is a real challenge for us. And we've got a lot of changing models of care and also changing roles. And we're going to talk a bit about that this afternoon when we have a panel discussion with Boyd, Janet and Ruth May, where I do hope we'll get some challenging questions from the floor. I'm saying that because I'm not answering the questions, I'm just going to fob them off to the panel to do. So I think the whole relationship of nursing and what people expect has changed. And when I had a short discussion with Janet this morning, one of the things I was saying that we hardly get a patient in that only has one problem now. There's massive comorbidity. If it's in mental health, they've got a range of physical health problems that we are not always equipped to deal with. If we get people in the community, they often have a lot of other psychological illnesses and so on. So it's a very different and challenging environment, and I think, again, it's something we should think of. And is the offer we're given as a profession, is the training that we've done, is the training we're going to have the right thing for us to do as a profession? But lots of opportunities for us, and I just wanted to mention, these are just some of the roles and opportunities for us as a profession. Sometimes when you get periods like this that are very challenging, it actually increases innovation. It doesn't stifle innovation. That certainly when I worked in the Northwest, we couldn't recruit psychiatrists at all. We're going back about 20 years. We just couldn't get them. And that was the first push in the Northwest of changing the role of nurses into advanced practice and nurse consultants. I don't think that would have happened if we had an oversupply of psychiatrists. So challenge can be good. Times of austerity doesn't feel like this, but times of austerity can be good. And we have a real opportunity to embrace that and take up the reins of some of the gaps that we see in service. So we've got loads of them. They put a second picture of Hattie Jakes, but again, I'll remind you, she's not a real nurse, she's an actress. She's a dead actress, I think, as well, actually. But one of the things we've been talking about to our commissioners and our partners is we can't do anything in isolation now. We've got to achieve what we want to do through partnerships. We've got to have partnerships at ward and team level. We still see schisms where the doctors have their own plan and nurses have their own and OTs have their own. That's not a very efficient way of working. It's not a good experience for patients. But you'll see all the things, and this will all be familiar to you, that we need to work through partnerships to improve end-of-life care and how we get individualised education, health and care plans and all the things that I've got on that slide. So we've also got to have partnerships with other agencies and I think developing them much better. We are trying to encourage how we work better with our commissioners, so we've not got adversarial relationships, and we want the same outcomes. And although the contracting process can be very difficult, once you've got that over, we should really be working together to improve the patient experience. And that can be, again, very, very tough for us. So, really against all that environment, we have, and this is just a selection, we have loads of nurses making a difference in our trust. And these are just a sample of the awards that some of our nurses have won over the past couple of years. We've far too many actually to put on one slide, and I've probably gone over my time anyway. So, but we've 4 health visitors who've been made fellows of the Institute of Health Visitors. Jackie Syme, Mary Sawtell, I'm sorry if I pronounced some of these names wrong, Caroline, is it Ramsamy or Ramsamy? Have you Ramsamy? And Sue Clark have all received these prestigious accolades. Tracy Reid and Jane McNaughton are Queen's nurses, and we have others that we're trying to track down apparently, but don't know where they are. But again, that's something that's I think a really good accolade for the individuals, but also for our trust. We've had Anne Nugent and Jackie Syme have received East of England NHS Leadership Awards. We've had Good Ofsted Report in Hampstead Children's Centre. And last year, for those of you who were privileged to be at the SEPT Star Awards, over 70% of the annual SEPT Star Awards were won by nursing staff. We've also been successful in achieving full accreditation for the UNICEF Baby Friendly Initiative. These are just little examples of many things, and I would encourage people to put individuals in for award, to put your teams in for awards, because we deserve them. We do some fantastic work, and it can seem a pain in the neck to do it and you don't have enough time. But for those of you who've won them, or those of you whose teams have won them, it's fantastic for your service. It builds the team, but it also gives external recognition. You know what you do well, but we should be letting other people know as well. So I would encourage you to do that. And, I would say, just to remind people, because I remind our commissioners at every meeting, we're a good trust. The CQC said so. All our services were good. There wasn't one that had an overall rating of requires improvement. We were all good. That's a fantastic achievement, mostly down to the people in this room and your colleagues. And I think we can't ever overplay that, because I certainly can't overplay it anymore. I tell everybody about this, because I keep saying to them, 110 CQC inspectors can't be wrong. So what we've got to do is we've got to go from good to great now. I want all our teams, all our nurses to be the best. I want I would want each ward to want to be the best ward in the trust. I would want each team to be the best team in the trust. That's what we should be striving for, against all the challenges and difficulties we've got. As you can see, even with all the challenges, we really achieve a lot. And the achievements don't mean just an award. This means we are impacting and improving patient experience, which every one of us in the room set out to do and want to do. So you need to congratulate yourself for all of that. So I just want to thank you. I hope you have a good day. And we're a pretty cool profession. I'm very proud. I hope you're proud to be a nurse. I've been doing it a long time now. I know that's hard to believe, looking at me now. But we do fantastically well. So have a great day. This is a celebration. I want you to enjoy it, have fun, and we'll learn a lot together. So thank you very much. So I'm now being very careful not to get the order. I've got all my notes in order, and you don't know what trouble the people have organised this to get me organised. Going to introduce Janet Davies now, who is our keynote speaker for the morning. I've known Janet for, again, a long time, Janet, I think. Janet and I were colleagues in the Northwest together. Janet was Director of Nursing in East Lancs? West Lancs, and was also Chief Exec of an ambulance trust. She's worked in RCN in roles before becoming the Chief Executive and General Secretary for the Royal College of Nursing. I'm absolutely delighted Janet could come. Janet's going to spend the whole day with us, I think, which is great. It's a great opportunity. Janet would, I know, welcome speaking to any of you throughout the day, and I'd encourage you to do so. But without further ado, I would just like to, and there is still a spider in here, Dan, just to hand over to Janet Davies. Thank you very much, Janet.
Thanks very much, Andy. I might be covering some of the same issues, but perhaps take a slightly different take on it. This year is a really important year for the college. It's our centenary, so it's 100 years since the RCN was formed. And of course, we're spending a lot of time, because we're nurses, in having parties and lots of different excuses to celebrate. But also, we're reflecting quite a lot on the past and how far nursing has come. So our founder was someone called Dame Sarah Swift. Any of you who may, there will be a picture of her at the end, but any of, not quite Hattie J, because I think even more scary. Any of you who might come to Cavendish Square, and you're all very welcome, whether you're members or not. We are open to the public these days with a lovely cafe, and at the moment we've got an exhibition of the centenary. So it's just opposite House of Fraser and John Lewis's, so when you're doing your shopping, call in, have a cheap cup of coffee and have a look. And you'll see pictures which I think are really interesting about nursing for 100 years, but also what is quite startling really when you look back is that it's only 100 years ago, it's not that far. You know, Andy has been nursing for over 40 years, that's nearly half of that time, isn't it? Me too though, so I can say it. I can say it because we're about the same sort of group really. But it was started in 1916 during the First World War, and actually at a very difficult time of the First World War. But when we reflect then, it was all women. There were no men there at that point. Men were fighting the war. Nurses were entirely female. But there was no registration for nurses. But even more interesting that really not that long ago, nurses didn't have the vote. So we had problems, I think, as a female, in establishing a profession that was entirely female in a society that didn't even allow women to vote. And Sarah Swift actually had to have a male MP to support the formation of the college and to get the legislation. So she was, you know, had to do that. I'm sure she was the most feisty of women. She certainly looks at it. And it's fascinating now, looking back at that it was a very small group of women who got together to form the college. And we now, as we speak, over 430,000 men and women who are members of the RCN. We now are officially the biggest professional nursing organisation in the world. I think that Sarah Smith would be absolutely amazed by the college as it is today, but even more so, she'd be amazed by nursing and what nurses are doing and the strides they have made and the roles they've taken. And she'd be absolutely amazed by you and every one of you in this room and the work that you're doing. If she came to look at you and see what you were doing at work, I think she'd be incredibly proud and incredibly amazed by what you've achieved. So, how times have changed. That picture is clearly not 100 years ago, it's much more recent than that, the one on the left, and how we have moved in the way we live and also in the way that nurses nurse. And one of the significant things is that there's been a massive improvement in life expectancy in that 100 years. Massive. And the things that people were dying of, we cannot imagine even seeing now, although obviously we're all aware there's a resurgence in some of those communicable diseases that were the biggest killer. And one of the biggest killers, of course, of people 100 years ago was poverty and diseases of poverty, as well, of course, as the war. And as many of you will know, that in 1916, a terrible, terrible loss of life and life-changing injuries to young men across Europe, but actually more people died following the First World War of the Spanish flu endemic. So very interesting to look at how far we have moved in terms of the conditions and diseases that we were treating as nurses and the way in which we nurse people, and how we have moved. And we've moved because we've moved with society, and we've moved with technology, and we've moved with science as well as art. But actually, what we haven't seen, and here particularly with such a focus on mental health in this trust, that mental health wasn't really featured in nursing and the nursing curriculum at that point, and in fact it was a very separate profession. And whereas I was talking about an organisation founded by women, mental health nurses were almost exclusively men at that point, and in fact men weren't allowed to join the RCN till the 1960s, which is hard to believe, isn't it? There was still that real separation. And I met recently, one of the fantastic things we did this year is we had a reception to celebrate nursing in the Speaker's House in Parliament. It's very hard to get into the Speaker's House. It was magnificent. And lots of nurses, lots of our members came to celebrate. And I met a member of the House of Lords who had been a mental health nurse who has never forgiven us, and who came to complain to me that he wasn't allowed to join the RCN when he was a practicing nurse. I think he's now in his 80s, but he came to complain to things. It was lovely, though. I mean, it was a very nice celebration, but it just shows how much we've moved. But where are we now? You know, what is the demand for healthcare? And in fact, some things haven't changed. We still have enormous health inequalities. In fact, in some ways, the distance has moved even greater. That the distance between the health of the poorest and the health of the richest is probably wider than it ever was. Communicable disease didn't discriminate, but actually diseases of poverty is still there. And particularly in terms of mental health as well as physical health, we have different challenges, but in some ways, some similarities. So demand for health services at the moment. We know that that 3/4 of deaths under 75s were cancer, stroke, heart, liver and respiratory disease. The percentage of adults and of children being either overweight or obese, this would never have been seen 100 years ago. It is a disease of society, if it is a disease. And the 3.2 million people having type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Of course, 100 years ago, diabetes wasn't treatable. Amazing to imagine. There was no antibiotics either, so you can see why things were different. And of course, by 2025, diabetes is expected to increase by 5 million. And 1.9 million people have 3 or more long-term conditions, and Andy alluded to that earlier on. That's also set to increase. And what is very significant about this longer life expectancy for many and the different diseases is how people might be living longer but not necessarily living well. And the number of people with mental health issues has also increased alongside this, and different mental health issues than perhaps we saw before. Those with learning disabilities who years ago would have not survived as long as they are doing, we should be really celebrating the advances we've made in nursing people with learning disabilities. We focus on the negatives and the scandals, but we just look back 100 years and what would have happened with our clients with learning disabilities. It would have been unimaginable that they live how they live now with the support that they have. So today's a day about celebrating, and I think we should, whilst looking at the challenges, what a massive difference we've made to those people. But of course, the challenge that then brings us is people living into old age with learning disabilities that would never have done so, with the physical disease that goes with that. And of course, we're all members of the same race, we're all human beings, and no matter what problems we have, we will have mental health problems, we may have learning disabilities, and we may have physical problems, but we don't have those exclusively. And that brings a massive challenge to the way we nurse, the way we care for people, but also in the way we educate ourselves and develop our education. Hospital to community, we're speaking to the converted here. Obviously, this is a rhetoric that I've heard since I was a student nurse, actually, when I was told that I would probably not work in a hospital. Most of us would be working in community settings, and hospitals would be very small places, and it has not changed. In fact, hospitals have got bigger, they've got more acute, as we get more sophisticated in our medicine, our science, we can do more things. And we probably at some point need to really get real about what this means. Of course, more people should be cared for in the community and certainly closer to home, but there will always be a place for hospitals. And I think that stands for whatever specialty it is. And we know in mental health, there has been absolutely at the vanguard and leading, moving care into the community. And much of the poor custodial care has disappeared. But we also have to recognise there is a definite, desperate need for positive therapeutic environments to help people recover and to protect them. And they are still required, and unfortunately, too often they're now not available. So we do have to, I think, reflect on just what that means and where that balance needs to be, as well as look at some of the settings that our clients may be living in. New models of care, 5-year forward view, now the 3-year forward view. We still keep calling it 5 years, but it's actually 2 years old now, so we've got about 3 years left. Interesting that this actually does absolutely put at the heart of it that it will be improvements to community care, but also recognises that hospital care needs to improve as well. Looking at clinical leadership, which is essential to make this work, and 29 pilots at this particular time in the actual 5-year forward view. Things have changed, there's all sorts of vanguards, there's all sorts of other different initiatives, because we don't seem to be able to, as a health service, stick to an idea and carry it forward. We seem to sort of fiddle with it at the edges. But there are definitely some really good examples of where integrated services are making a difference, and where putting the client at the heart of what we do will make a massive difference. The addition of parity of esteem, is it real? Will it work? And I'm looking forward to hearing far more from you about how that is going, because it feels a little bit like rhetoric at the moment, but we're seeing some fantastic examples of where that's happening, if not everywhere. But then fascinating that we've got a separate document come out about primary care. And actually, if we've got true integration, why have we got a different strategy for primary care as we have for the rest of integrated services? So we're not quite getting there. Obviously, 7-day care, and Andy alluded to the fact that it's nurses that are actually always there, that it's nurses that do 24/7. Actually, we probably do need more support, and have we got the right nurses if we're going to change the way we work? But what we really need, and some of the work that the RCN is doing at the moment, is to try and pin people down in what is meant by 7-day care and 7-day services. Is it due to difference in mortality, where we need to have different level of support and services at certain times? Or is it a political will to have services available regardless of mortality? Does that mean acute services? Does it mean primary care? And at the moment there's a real lack of clarity, and it's confusing everybody. So the work that we started with the medical colleges sort of went on to hold the minute they started to take unsocial hours payments away from the medics in order to fund further 7-day working, allegedly, but we can't see how that works. Of course, that made everything go on hold, because the minute you attack something, it becomes difficult to make some progress. So we're all watching with great interest, I think, the negotiations at the moment with our medical colleagues. But undoubtedly, 7-day care is something that needs to develop. And we need to seriously think, yes, we may have nurses available. Are they the decision makers? Are they the leaders? Do we need to look at our skill mix at those times if we're really to fundamentally shift care towards the whole 7 days? We know that our clients, when they have a crisis at weekend, it's always harder to get them the support than it is if they have the crisis during the week. So is our profession ready? We have moved from challenge to opportunity, and is absolutely right. Revalidation is such a huge thing for our profession, but it's easy. I saw those hands up to say that it has been simple to revalidate. But what's really, I think, heartening is that we're beginning to have those professional conversations. We're beginning to reflect on our practice and take seriously CPD. And even more important is other people are taking it seriously. So for as long as I can remember, we've campaigned for CPD for nurses, that your training doesn't stop when you qualify, and actually this is the route to it. So we should be really celebrating revalidation. It's taken years for us to get it. We've asked for it, and now I think it will really help us to move our profession forward. So I know you're embracing it here, and we need to encourage any colleagues at all who might be nervous to just have a go and get on with it. So, specialist nurses, looking at your organisation, you have quite a lot of specialist nurses. You have nurses in quite a broad range of roles, and I know we're going to hear about some of that a bit later on. There is a difference between specialist practice and advanced practice. Advanced practice can be in a generalist area. Specialist is much more niche. We've never really got that right, and I think sometimes our roles, we've got advanced practitioners called specialist practitioners, we've got specialist practitioners, advanced, etc. But in some ways, and I was talking about this earlier on, let's not get too hung up about that. We do get a bit obsessed by titles. We've got about 1,000 titles, I think, over the country. But actually, it's making a difference to clients and patients that matters. And it's about them recognising what you are and what you do that really matters. And what we have seen is that these roles have incredibly positive client feedback. They are very much welcomed, and they have a massive effect, not only in the short term, but in the long term. And sometimes it's that long-term difference that is the biggest benefit, which is why these roles are so perilous, because every time we have a period of austerity, the specialist roles get looked at because they don't have a impact straight away on targets. It takes a few years sometimes, or a few months before actually the benefit is seen. Certainly the quality of care that's improved by these roles isn't necessarily recognised by some of the very blunt mechanisms of the way that things are looked at from external to organisations. So it is important we can actually ensure that we can demonstrate the importance of these roles, but also make sure that we don't de-skill others, and that we work very closely as a team. In order to do any of this, we need clinical leadership. This is a bit of a romp through all the issues, and I know you're doing lots of these things in this trust, but today I'm just hoping we can think about the whole thing in a round and look at how we might take it even further forward. We have to have strong leadership at all levels. We have to have strong nursing leadership at all levels. And when we talk about leadership, it doesn't mean the director of nursing. It means clinical leadership. So you can be a healthcare assistant and you are a clinical leader. Quite often, you can be controlling a certain area of work, or you are leading work with your patients. And the skills that you develop, working with clients, working with patients, are true leadership skills that you can then take through your profession on wherever you want to go. But it is important we invest in leadership skills. Just because you're a very good clinical nurse doesn't mean you'll be a very good team leader or ward sister. Just because you're a good team leader doesn't mean you'll be a good manager, doesn't mean you'll be a good director. So we have to invest both in ourselves and also in our own staff, in our own areas. We cannot just leave people to flounder, and so leadership at every level is such an important thing. You've got lots of programmes that I know you've developed here and that you've done here, but some of it is about taking responsibility for ourselves, particularly with leadership skills. You cannot be given them. So there's lots of programmes that will develop leadership in situ in your world, such as the RCN one, there's lots of others. But actually there is something about taking your own responsibility if you want to develop your leadership skills, and finding other things, sometimes outside health, that will help you gain those skills. Technology. We talked a little bit about technology, I heard that before. Actually, what's very interesting with technology is that one of the things technology has done is it's changed the relationship we have with our patients and clients. All our clients have, even our older clients, have access to email. They have family that have access to email, even if they don't. They have data available on their mobile phone. They often have better technology than we have as nurses, and it has totally changed the relationship. It has pushed it into partnership because they will often have the information before you do. My experience recently, a personal experience, I had something wrong with my knee, we didn't really know what it was. I sat with my GP, she went on the internet and looked at what I could probably have done at home, but we looked at it together. You see that much more often. It's a fantastic shift in relationship. We've wanted this for a long time, and I think the big difference technology's made is that it isn't about doing things faster, it isn't doing about all the things that we have for diagnostics, although of course that is clearly very, very important and significant. It has shifted that balance of information and power, which gives us a much more therapeutic relationship, I believe. But to use technology to its benefit, you're great at buying kit in the NHS that doesn't then work at the black spot in Essex or in the person's house. So then you write your notes and then go and put it on the computer afterwards, which is doubling your workload. We do tend to use it on top of the ways of working rather than changing our ways of working and then look at how the technology supports it. Any system that you put in will never cope with the complexity of healthcare. We make everything so blooming complicated and bureaucratic that no system can work with that. So we do have to look at the way we work, and that's another challenge for you as you're introducing different ways of working on how does that technology support it. Sorry, this is a bit of a whistle stop. I'm trying to get a bit of time for questions as well with the time I've got. And research and evidence. Now, I'm going to be very careful here. I don't know how many of you follow Twitter very carefully, and I heard Andy say, please don't say the chief exec of the RCN was rubbish. I have to say you would not be the first people to tweet that if you were. I'm developing a very hard skin. But I'm being careful here because some of you may have seen the Nursing Times. I did speak at a conference in the Northwest, very similar to this, made some challenging comments about research, and all my nurse academics are now saying they're leaving the RCN and how rubbish I am because of what I said. So I'm going to choose my words very carefully. Clearly, research is incredibly important for nursing. And if we are truly a profession, we have to be good at interpreting research, but we also have to produce research. We have to produce research that will move our clinical care forward and will also help with nursing policies. My challenge to that audience remains in that it is important that people have those research skills. It is very important that we have people with PhDs, and some of those studies may be empirical studies. There may be studies that will actually enable them to gain those skills. But where I believe we have still failed in research, and I'm not taking it back, is that we have not systematically, nationally looked at the evidence we require for our practice and for our staffing levels and for policies, so that politicians are able to come in and say, I believe this is what you should be doing, and we haven't got that research evidence to either push that back or to actually take it a step further. And so we do have to do work together across the country on what we required and how we commission research. So that still stands. I've said it very carefully this time. So if the tweets all go bananas again, and everybody's going to leave the RCN because they've got such a terrible leader because of what I said last time, I also have to say, if anybody has an issue with what I have to say, please give me a ring before you start slamming it on Twitter, and then we can perhaps talk it through. But anyway, I'll leave research at that for the moment, just in case I say the wrong thing again. Andy talked about multi-professional working, absolutely critical. And actually, I would say, in community areas, particularly learning disabilities, in mental health, we've been doing this for a long time. Lots of multi-professional working, but we do have to still see what's unique about nursing. We should be proud of our profession. Today is about celebrating nursing, and just because we might have lots of shared responsibilities, we work very closely as a team, we have some transferable skills, there is something about the element of being a nurse we have to be explicit about. There's two things here. I'm sorry they're very acute focused, but they're acute focused because that's probably where the biggest problem is. The one on the left here is actually an incredibly significant document. It's not necessarily been noted as being significant, and we're not making a big fuss about it because we think it's the right thing to do. But that document on the left is actually the curriculum, and it's the assessments and the curriculum for the advanced clinical practitioner in emergency care. And you'll see there, the logos on there, is the College of Emergency Medicine, Health Education England and the Royal College of Nursing. We haven't got the logo here of the College of Paramedics, but they have been involved and they have been jointly accredited. So this programme is jointly accredited and agreed by all those colleges, which means if you're a doctor, if you're a nurse, if you're an allied health professional, then your curriculum and your assessments are the same. But what isn't the same is that underlying registration and profession that you're building on. So you will be bringing different things. And this will occur more and more. So I believe in 100 years' time, when whoever's at the RCN, long after we've all disappeared, when they look at nursing and how it's progressed, I think there will be much more interprofessional nursing and different roles that are not interchangeable, but can actually work closely, even on the same rotas like happens in emergency medicine. The one on the right is the work we do with the Royal College of Physicians on ward rounds. That's ward rounds in medicine, it applies to all others. The ways we communicate, the way we do things are very much different than the Hattie Jakes walking around with the consultant, but actually we've lost some things. We've lost some communication, we've lost some nursing leadership by not having different forms of communication. And if you look at that document, I think it applies to all specialties. It doesn't talk about walking around the wards with your notes, but it does talk about how you build that communication around your patients. So, moving on, I think we'll be covering a bit of this afternoon. We might cover all of this afternoon, so there's going to be lots of opportunities to ask me questions and also to discuss it, I think, in the panel this afternoon. Big thing of the moment, I would say, loss of government funding for degrees. I've got to be very clear about this because I think we should be more angry than we are, because we just keep talking about the loss of the bursary. We haven't just lost the bursary, we've lost government funding for the education of our nurses. They're going to have to pay for it for themselves under a loan. So we talk about the bursary, that's not the biggest issue for me. The biggest scandal is that they took £800 million out of nurse education when we're short nurses. I mean, I can't believe how ridiculous that is. And I can't believe why you're not all so angry about it. I feel a bit like the RTN's a bit of a lone voice on that one, because everyone's focusing on the bursary. It's a bit more than that. However, moving on from that, we have got a challenge. It will be different in the way that we educate our nurses. We are very concerned about new apprenticeship models. I'm not talking about the nurse associate at the moment, I'm talking about the levy that's being put on all organisations who are told they have to have so many apprentices who will go up to degree level, because we must not make the mistakes of the past. We must enable true studentship, true scholarship for the nurses we need in the future. If we are going to move forward and not backwards, we need people who are flexible, who've worked in lots of different settings. And as we saw at the beginning, our clients don't segregate. They don't separate their physical, mental and learning disability. So neither should we. And I'm really concerned that in apprenticeships we could go backwards and go back into those silos, which will not make nurses for the future. So we need to be really careful, because we are going to have apprenticeships, because otherwise you'll be broke, because your money will get taken off you, that we do something that will make nurses for the future. We've got to really think about it carefully. And then, of course, the nursing associates, the Band 4s. Have we got Band 4s in here today? A few. So we've got to be really clear about this, and I just want to be clear about the RCN's position. We believe nursing associates are a great thing. We believe Band 4s have a real role to play in a multi-professional team. What we do not believe in is that is a nurse, but they are a very important part of the nursing team. Absolutely fantastic that there may be some better education and support for Band 4s within our teams. And also really important that there are opportunities for Band 4s who want to, because not everybody wants to. It's a great role in its own right, and we shouldn't ever belittle that. They're not second level anything, they are first level of what we are. But that there is opportunities for our Band 4s who want to proceed, who want to go into nurse training, that is much more readily available. And that's what we're focusing on. We think that is fantastic. Our concern is that it's not nursing on the cheap, that it's not a second level or a second rate nurse, which is how it could be seen if we're not careful, and that obviously if people were doing the same jobs, we still have agenda for change anyway. So one of my threats to the Secretary of State was that, before with enrolled nurses, in the last clinical grading, people got the same as registered nurses. So, there is such a thing as equal pay for equal value. And that's where I guess we need to be a bit careful and don't abuse people who are doing such fantastic work as our nurse associates are. Hence the shift from associate nurse to nursing associates. I think it makes it much clearer. It's only in a name, but there are some brilliant roles, and the work that you do and the more of you that will do with your patients and clients will be incredibly valuable. I'm getting there. Which takes me a bit to the other role of the RCN. And we are not at all embarrassed by the fact we are a trade union as well as a professional organisation. We believe the two go very much hand in hand. We think it's time to rehabilitate the image of trade unions, because actually what are they? They are the organisation that keeps workplaces safe. If we hadn't had trade unions, workplaces in all disciplines, in all areas, I think would be not what they are now. If we look at the history of trade unions, it's about keeping ourselves safe. It's about much more than that. It's about developing practice. We have learning representatives who will take people through programmes of education, and actually it's also about working in partnership with employers to make the workforce a very positive environment in which there's ways to work. The majority of work that trade unions do is very positive. It's about improving the environment. It's about improving the way we work. It's not about fighting or having arguments. I mean, that sometimes happens. But also, we believe that trade unions are great for justice. You know, it's very difficult if you've got a difficult relationship and it's so imbalanced that you've no one to support you, that I think trade unions are actually fundamental to good patient and client care. I think we contribute together to that. But we have got an issue with pay. It is getting more and more significant. We have got a pay campaign running at the moment. You may not have seen it. We are not doing it where we're marching down the streets. We're not asking necessarily for you to sign up to anything, but we are trying to educate the public. We're getting quite a lot of traction in some places on this, that how poorly nursing staff are paid. If any of you heard the Woman's Hour last week, we had a whole week of nursing on Woman's Hour. How fantastic is that? That took us a long time to get that. The RCN has been working with them for about a year. They've done it because of the centenary year, and they were all recognising, if you heard that, on how poorly nurses are paid for the responsibility that they have. Generally recognised. We're doing lots of that, so you'll see it quietly in a very professional way, that we need to make sure that we realise nursing's fallen behind other professions. 53% of nursing staff working extra hours to pay the bills. I don't know what's going to happen with the agency cap. We do want people to work full time for us, but some of those people are our own staff anyway. Some people are working hours that they won't admit to us because they know we will tell them it's unsafe, and they may not be working in your trust, but they'll be working somewhere else. And that is a very sad state of affair for a profession, and that is because they need to pay the bills. So we're looking very closely to the future on social hours, and of course, if there is a look at reducing unsocial hour payments to nurses like they are doing with the medics, I think the RCN will be incredibly busy, or you will, because the RCN is 400 and odd thousand members. It's not someone sitting in Cavendish Square. So a little bit to finish off about the RCN, whether you remember or not, we will support all nurses with these campaigns, and the role of the RCN is exactly the same as it was at the beginning. So it was set up to support education, to support practice, to support individuals and supporting the profession. We have not changed, we're doing the same thing. And just to finish off, there's Sarah Swift. Not quite Hattie Jakes, but she looks so scary, doesn't she? I don't think you'd argue with her anyway. And it was very interesting is that what she was fighting for and what she saw the potential for was ensuring that nurses could access standardised quality education leading to a register of recognised professionals. Where are we now? We seem to be talking about a very similar and the same thing. And her idea was to establish a College of Nursing that would make this happen. It did. The Royal College was absolutely essential to that, and we believe we're essential to the next stage as well. But the college is different now because we have such a large number of people that any of you who are members of the college, it really is going to be up to you to make the next steps happen. Thank you very much.
One mic.
Okay.
Look at this. Like we're going to sing a duet here, isn't it? We're running a bit behind. That's entirely my fault, isn't it? Yeah. Isn't it? Yes. I thought you'd agree. But we'll take 2 or 3 questions just now. We'll certainly be able to catch up time. And for those of you who are squeezed in and out, we'll find some spaces for you to go to. But certainly we'll take 2 or 3 questions now. Has anybody got? Yeah, I've got a few. No, there's a microphone coming. Sorry. You've got your hand up as well, Heather.
Do you think by getting rid of not the bursary but the money for education that we're going to find even less nurses? And do you think that actually people, I think for myself, I could say I wouldn't have wanted to be saddled with a massive debt coming into nursing, knowing how little you get paid for so long. So do you think that we're going to find a big depletion in numbers?
We think it's a huge risk. We don't know because it's never been tested. Our gut feeling is that it will, but we don't know. What I do think will be a difficulty is that I think the people who come into nursing will be different. So I think if you're 18 and you're finishing school and you're thinking of going to university or you're thinking of doing anything, I think it's just become part of the course that, that's what you do. You take out a loan. So I don't think it will actually put off 18-year-olds necessarily. It might do, because we get people who don't want to do that. What we think is the biggest risk is our more mature students, who are so essential because they've got life skills, they're some of our best students, and particularly in mental health, we know that the demographic is higher in terms of age, and those with second careers, because if you've already got a mortgage, you've already got childcare, you've already got everything else going on in your life, do you want to pick up that debt? And we think that's where the biggest risk is going to be. We have managed to change the rules for people who've already got a degree, because I don't know if you know, if you've already got a degree, you can't have a loan, so you can only have it for a first degree. And of course that meant that anybody who's already got a degree couldn't come into nursing, which seems a bit of an own goal. They have changed that, particularly for this. But it just means they can have another loan. So they could be paying off 2 loans. I mean, the idea is relax, you're never going to pay that off. It's just going to be sitting somewhere. However, as I've said, I think the big travesty is that they've done this at this time. We've got a consultation out. It's going out, I think, tomorrow. I just signed it off yesterday. It doesn't matter if you are a member of the Royal College of Nursing or not. Please go on the RCN's website and fill in that questionnaire. We will be going back to the ministers. We've been talking to them all the time. They have taken some notice of us, and they have changed some of the things that we're thinking of. But actually, the only power that we've got is in the number of people who will respond to that survey. And some people think it's a good idea. So we do need to see, what the real feeling is amongst nurses, and also those people who are thinking of coming into nurses. So it's open to the public as well as our members, so anybody. So if you can encourage your children, your children's friends, students that you know, to fill in our questionnaire, because the more responses we get, the more power that gives us to say, look, this isn't going to work, or we need to change it in such a way. We're also asking for ideas, because there are some ideas coming out about, paying for clinical placement area times, or, doing some forgivable loans when you get a job, all sorts of things that might make it better, if inevitably it will. And the big thing is, of course, that this wasn't a planned thing by the Department of Health. It was the Treasury who found a pot of money. So it was actually in the comprehensive spending review that the money went, not an actual Department of Health announcement that they thought this was a better thing to do. So it's a bit strange.
Janet, thank you very much for a really thought-provoking presentation. One of the RCN priorities in 2016 is value in nursing.
It is.
And I just want some ideas about the most important ways you think that we can value our nurse workforce. I know we do presentations, etc., but how should we truly be valuing our nursing workforce?
I think it's about recognising that role. Obviously, it isn't within any of your gifts to pay nurses more. That's what we are telling the government and our NHS employers, although to be perfectly honest, if NHS employers haven't got the money, they can't do anything about it. But I think actually in clinical areas, it's about how are we rewarding people in ways other than within the salary, and there's lots of things. How are we looking after the health and well-being of our staff? Have we got, how are we looking at their shift patterns? How are we supporting them in their home life? What things can we do that don't actually cost anything? One of the things that the Royal College of Nursing is good at is looking after our own staff, because we think we need to be exemplars. And the other thing we're really proud about this year, in our centenary year, that we've just been recognised as being the 10th best not-for-profit organisation to work for by the Sunday Times. So we can do it, but we have health and well-being champions in every single area of our college. Every single department has someone. We've got lots of initiatives that recognise when people might be feeling stressed, that put positive things in. Things that even when people are really busy, the time out, somewhere to go, a physical space or an activity or something that can happen. Even healthy eating, which it might sound a bit trite, but something that's rather nice that will give people. There's lots and lots of things. We've got a Working Well campaign, the RCN, where we're saying, you know, employers, please sign up to this. We'll work in partnership with people, and it makes a huge difference. It doesn't always take much, and it is about recognising also a good job. You know, how people are frazzled, it's so busy. How many times do we say thank you? And I don't mean just saying thank you for thank you's sake, but actually believing that that makes a difference. As well as actually, I think, demonstrating it, having things. I mean, today's a fantastic thing. Look at how many of you are here. You can't even fit in the room. Much more of this sort of thing, bringing people together. And actually, what I think nurses really need is recognition for themselves that they're doing a good job. Because we always want to do the very best thing. We know that nurses get really depressed and stressed when they think they're not doing the job that they know they could do. And actually, sometimes it's saying, you know, I am pretty good, I'm doing a great thing. And today's a really good start, but much more of that.
Yes, thank you very much. I just got a couple of questions, but difficult to know which ones which will be really key for everyone. But I kind of think in the light of your comments on the importance of research, do you think it's about time for the nursing profession to have protected time for consolidation of academic work and time away from their clinical time, where they can absolutely push? Our medics have that. I know that a number of my colleagues have got some very good ideas and want to take some of their work they've done on masters or whatever forward. And I wonder if you obviously would want to support that in the RCN and see where we go with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's secondment opportunities. Secondment opportunities where you've got a job when you come back. You know, we provide a lot of secondment opportunities in the RCN, and they're incredible roles when you see them. You know, we bring people in from proper clinical practice to work nationally on issues, trying to get people into those because they're so scared that someone's going to fill the job and they won't have anywhere to go to at the end of it. Actually, that's never happened. So it does tend to be a bit of a panic. Everyone's always gone back to their work when they've come in. But I definitely, secondments, time out, it actually is a very good investment, and it is also about how we value the workforce, because it will actually pay dividends in terms of staffing levels. So we might feel we're really tight, but you have motivated staff who are going off working on nice guidelines, developing their own research, then they will actually foster an environment that people want to work in, and you won't have problems recruiting. If you look at the magnet work, that's exactly what they do, and they're falling over staff.
Right. What was predicted by on my team is I would go off piste and I'd fall behind in time, so I'm very sorry for this. So we're going to have a break now, and you can take your coffee and that, and I'll see you all when you come back. Thank you.